Summertime is in full swing. The political landscape is starting to take shape, and that means political football is being played all around. My first guest of the election season, Senator John Rafferty, candidate for the office of Attorney General here in Pennsylvania.
The Commonwealth's attorneys and I have concluded that the NCAA sanctions were overreaching and unlawful.
Someone's got to develop a product that you and I as a consumer are going to want to buy.
Our country needs a comprehensive energy plan.
Good morning and welcome to this edition of For the Record. Pleased to be joined by the senator from the 44th District of the state of Pennsylvania, Mr. John Rafferty. And I should mention, more importantly, that you are running for the office of the Attorney General in the state of Pennsylvania. So welcome, Senator. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Andrew. It's my pleasure.
Now, you just aren't here in State College just for me. There was some business to attend to earlier today, the tour downtown. How did it go?
Sure, went very well. I'm taking the opportunity in any section of the state I go into to talk with the Chamber of Commerce to see what's important in those issues and those areas and any issues they may be facing. I was very excited to hear about the incubator program at Penn State. So we took some time to go over and talk to the people from Ben Franklin and from Penn State to talk about the initiatives they have to encourage entrepreneurship and businesses growing here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Fascinating tour, and as a senator, it's good to see how money's being spent because we do help fund Ben Franklin. So it was very interesting to hear the concepts being initiated over there, the concepts being developed and new businesses initiating out of Penn State, and then having the chance to interact with your Chamber of Commerce, see what they're doing on Main Street in the borough here. It's really good for the borough and for the area to see such a growing and thriving business community. Before
we get into your candidacy for the office of Attorney General, how does you being a candidate, though, affect and help you with your current role as a state senator?
I think being the state senator has been very much a part of me being a very effective candidate, because not only am I running on, and we'll get into my past, but I've been a prosecutor, I've been a civil lawyer. For 13 years, I've been in the Senate of Pennsylvania, where I have authored or been a co-sponsor of a number of significant pieces of legislation in the criminal law section that today our prosecutors, the DAs across the Commonwealth, are using to put bad guys behind bars. And me traveling into those areas and getting a chance to talk to the local police, talk to the local business community. I spent some time with one of the labor organizations in Western PA yesterday, talking to them. It's good to know that legislation that we worked on, or I may have authored, is being very effective in helping them to increase the quality of life here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
The diverse background from being a senator, your background in small business, which I believe is about 10 years that you own a small business, from civil law to your time as a deputy attorney general in the late 80s to early 90s. In your own words, how do those experiences make you the best candidate come November?
Well, it makes me uniquely qualified to run the Office of Attorney General. The Office of Attorney General, you're the CEO of a corporation of 800 plus employees. I have the business experience, I had the budget, I had to pay mortgages, I had to hire and fire people. So that is something that will take hold in the Commonwealth, in the Office of Attorney General, and be helpful to me in the Office of Attorney General. Then with my background as well as a prosecutor, I was a prosecutor for 3.5, 4 years in the Office of Attorney General. So I not only read the Commonwealth Attorneys Act, but I practiced under the Commonwealth Attorneys Act. And I was in the Criminal Law Division Medicaid fraud section, which are very complex cases, where oftentimes they're very tedious, there's a lot of paperwork, and I did use grand juries when I was in the Office of Attorney General, so I have that background knowledge. And then in the civil law section, people often forget the Office of Attorney General has a criminal law division, they also have a civil law division. I mean, anybody who sues the Commonwealth, the Attorney General's office represents. Any consumer protection issues, the Office of Attorney General investigates. Anything regarding charitable trusts and nonprofits, the Office of Attorney General is involved in. Any contracts the Commonwealth enters into, the Office of Attorney General is involved in. And my civil practice has taken me to many of those areas of the law. I've done education law representing school districts. I did mental health law for a number of years, solicitor for the mental health circuit for the County of Montgomery. I've done zoning, real estate, business. I've done personal bankruptcies. I've done name changes, adoptions. I've got into the court and actually have had a presence in the court in both the civil side and the criminal side. Unlike any other candidate in this race, I've been in the courtroom and I have the understanding, which is going to be helpful now bringing the integrity and professional responsibility back to the Office of Attorney General to be able to associate and be able to be one-on-one with those individuals, understanding what their relationship is with the practice of law and with the Office of Attorney General. And then 13 years in the Senate of Pennsylvania, I've been known as a consensus builder, one who's been able to bring people together to get a job done.
You mentioned kind of the integrity of the Office of the Attorney General. Obviously, these past years have been very tumultuous under Kathleen Kane. A lot of people that are associated with Penn State will say it even goes back further than that. What do you do from the day, if you were to win the election, the day you walk in there, what is the first thing you do on day number one?
Day number one, I'm going to walk into that office, reorganize the senior staff, obviously, which anyone going into the AG's office would do. Reorganize the senior staff, put good, solid people into those chief slots, and meet with the staff to ensure them that there's policies now to be filed, and we have some of those online already. You follow the policies, you do the job in which you were selected to do, and perform to the best of your abilities. I'll have your back. So we're going to ensure their integrity in that office, reassure them of the professional responsibility, and bring back the esprit de corps that existed in the Office of Attorney General from General Zimmerman through General Corbett, to make sure that once again they realize their importance in the lives of the Pennsylvanians, whether they're on the criminal side or the civil side. Then, Andrew, I'm going to take a tour through the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to the 20-some regional offices to have the same one-on-one conversation with those employees there. We have some terrific people in the Office of Attorney General employed as lawyers, agents, and staff. And I have to reassure them that unlike what's been going on for 3.5 years now, you do your job, which you were selected to do, you perform to the utmost of your abilities, I will have your back, and we're going to function as a team to make sure that we operate in the best interests of the people of the Commonwealth.
How do you assure the citizens of Pennsylvania that from your office to the court system that they know their best interests are at hand, because there are problems throughout it, starting with the Office of Attorney General, even into the state Supreme Court and things like that?
Well, fortunately, as a senator, I've been known as an outspoken critic and one who's pushed for reforms in the Senate of Pennsylvania, is not afraid to speak out and say to people, let's do this instead of that. And when I announced my candidacy, Andrew, I think this is very important for the people of Pennsylvania to focus on. When I announced my candidacy, I pledged to run for 4 years. If elected, I would serve 4 years, and if reelected, I'll serve 4 years. That's 8 years. I'm not running for governor. I'm not running for U.S. attorney. I'm not running for U.S. senator. I'm running to be attorney general. That means I'm going to make the right decisions for the right reasons, not under a political spotlight or a pollster. I'm the only one who can say that.
You are watching WHVL's For the Record. We are talking with Senator John Rafferty, candidate for Office of Attorney General in the state of Pennsylvania. Welcome back to For the Record. Senator John Rafferty, candidate for Pennsylvania's Attorney General. And Senator, earlier in the show you brought up grand juries. Obviously, for the last 3.5 years, hot topic out of Harrisburg regarding perjury, grand jury leaks with Kathleen Kane, Porngate, things like that. Grand juries, they're supposed to be secretive. People around Penn State, they know that sometimes they're not secretive. We had a leak back when Tom Corbett was governor that apparently some reporter just happened to be looking at a site in the 5 minutes that something was up. How do you go about restoring the order in the grand jury process?
Grand jury is a very effective tool for a prosecutor. It's sometimes the only means in which to probe and find the evidence that you need to go forward in a criminal conviction. I have done grand jury work. You take an oath of office that anything that happens within that grand jury room, not only you as a prosecutor, but the grand jurors, take that same oath of office of confidentiality to make sure that you adhere to the rules, that nothing is discussed. If someone discusses it and someone lets the information out, then they're going to face prosecution by the Office of Attorney General. I took the same oath when I was working the mental health circuit. You take an oath of confidentiality. Today, I've never, ever spoken about any of the people that I saw in any of those institutions, and I've never spoken about any of the particulars in the grand jury room, even though it's led to prosecutions, and some of that is public information. But I take very seriously the oath of office, and I expect all my officials in the Office of Attorney General to do the same.
Kathleen Kane, it is a hot topic. It will continue to be a hot topic, whether it's Mr. Shapiro in the Attorney General office or yourself. It's a very fine line that you guys will have to tread lightly on either side, because on one side, no matter what is done, people will say it's for political purposes. How would you go about handling the situation that she is in right now?
Well, it will be me. And let me say right up front, I voted to remove Kathleen Kane from the Office of Attorney General. When a vote became before the Senate of Pennsylvania, I was one of the all but one Republican and only one Democrat joined us, so we fell short of the 2/3 vote because I think that you do need a law license, and I think that the effects of the office under the present leadership has been devastating and very discouraging for people in the office and people in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. How I would handle it is, first of all, grand jury leaks, as I said, cannot be tolerated. You prosecute those individuals who do that. You mentioned Porngate. That became a sideshow. I mean, we already have a policy in effect of proper use of government property, and that's it. You follow it. The special prosecutor that was hired said there's nothing criminal here. People should not have been doing that. They should be disciplined for doing that. I agree. But don't be piecemealing it out just to try to sideline what you're facing. And I think that's how it's been done. If you had something on that, then just put it all out and get it all out at once. And I think that it's important for the people of Pennsylvania to know that the Office of Attorney General, again, is not going after personal vendettas, but making the right decision for the right reason and working to the betterment of the people of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and acting as a prosecutor. The Office of Attorney General is an intersection of law and policy. You have to be knowledgeable in the law, which I am, and you have to be able to affect policy changes, which I've done in the legislature, and you have to be able to do that going forward in the Office of Attorney General and not carry through with these personal vendettas.
You're in a unique position, maybe the most unique position, I will say the most unique position of any candidate that was running for this office going back into the primaries, in that you are in a position to set policy, to set laws. Now, Ms. Kane chose what laws at times to enforce, what laws not to enforce. In your mind, how do you go about, if you're the Attorney General, on what laws you're going to go after? Or is it a straight, this is the law of Pennsylvania, I will defend this law or execute this law to the best of my ability?
Under the Commonwealth Attorneys Act, which is the definitive act on the powers of the Attorney General, duties of the Attorney General, you are to defend the laws of the Constitution of Pennsylvania. If a law has been duly enacted by the legislature, signed by the governor, then it's your job to defend the law. You can pass the law defense over to the office of the governor, to the office of general counsel, if there's a conflict. For instance, if it was one of my bills that was being challenged that I had authored, I may have the office of general counsel defend in that stead. But it's your job not to choose what's constitutional, but to defend a statute. We have a third branch of government that was empowered under our Constitution to make the decision on what's constitutional and what's unconstitutional, and that's the court. And the Supreme Court would make the final decision on what law is constitutional and unconstitutional. It's your job as Attorney General to defend that law before the third branch of government.
Nationally, obviously the national race is going to have a big effect on some of the races in Pennsylvania. Pat Toomey, Katie McGinty race in the U.S. Senate is one of those. This will also be one of those races that's affected. Mandatory minimums. That's a hot topic in the judicial system right now nationally, expected to be in Pennsylvania as well. How do you go about reforming the judicial system and possibly changing up mandatory minimum sentences?
I actually like mandatory minimums, and I would like to have the mandatory minimums restored here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for the high-level drug dealers, because it's a deterrent for them, knowing that if they're caught and convicted, they're going to face jail time. And I want them for crimes of violence or crimes where guns are used. We should be putting those people behind bars for a set period of time. I don't, as one of my colleagues who doesn't like mandatory said, well, based on the scoring, they should go to jail. Well, I want it that they will go to jail if they're involved in those type of events or harming a child. They should face jail. Face jail, mandatory. If they're going to be a sexual predator on a child, mandatory. So we're trying to get some of the mandatories back here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in those instances. Certainly we recognize the fact that people that have been abusers of drugs and have been addicted to drugs, that we're not going to jail our way out of that problem. So we have to have the alternative for rehabilitation and for addiction relief and medical procedures to help them get off the heroin or get off whatever drug they have. But as far as those aforementioned crimes, I think mandatories are a necessity.
Heroin, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we have more time in the next block. Obviously, that's a problem in Pennsylvania. But real quick, sanctuary city policy out of Philadelphia. That became a hot topic again this week.
Opposed. I'm on a bill in the Senate of Pennsylvania, I believe it's Senator Alloway's bill, that would outlaw and prohibit sanctuary cities in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This is just a haven for people that violate the crimes to be able to hide out.
The Mayor Kenny out of Philadelphia, he is defending the sanctuary city policy that they have down there in southeastern Pennsylvania. You are watching WHVL's For the Record with Senator John Rafferty, candidate for Pennsylvania's Attorney General. Welcome back to For the Record. We are talking with Senator John Rafferty, candidate for the Pennsylvania State Office of Attorney General. Heroin. It's an epidemic all across the country. The feds will say it's specifically an epidemic in the northeastern quadrant of the country. Pennsylvania, we're not immune to that. This DMA, they're not immune to it. What could be done in the state or the Commonwealth to combat it?
It's a crisis. And I look at the possibility that as we have in the legislature passed a number of initiatives to better regulate pharmaceutical prescriptions being written and the delivery of the drugs to individuals, including having a platform where you can punch in the names and see the individual, what other pharmacy he had gone to, what other doctor he had gone to, when was his last prescription, how many pills has he gotten at that one. It's going to be very helpful to us to help curb that, but what I know is going to happen is those who are looking for the high are going to turn to heroin for their high. So I look as, unfortunately, a spike in the heroin in that regard, but I think that some of the program that I've outlined, and very briefly, Andrew, we're going to have a heroin strike force. And it's going to be the Office of Attorney General using our personnel and resources trained in those areas, working very closely with the 67 DAs throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, because it's only as a team effort you're going to be able to do this. And using their resources to work street dealers, we'll work the mid-level and upper-level dealers, get the mandatories back for those upper-level dealers, put them out of business. You're going to disrupt them and dismantle them. That's how you're going to do it. Keep disrupting, dismantling. You hit them here, then you hit them over here next week.
Does that plan include more boots on the ground, specifically in local communities that could be targeted?
It will be more boots on the ground and better coordination of the boots that we have on the ground now, making sure we have those resources available. There'll be an education aspect that agents will go into the schools to talk to the kids. We've already talked to pharma and we've talked to the medical community as well to get ideas. And we'll also work with our courts to make sure that we have, I sat on the steering committee for the Veterans Courts here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we made sure that there were alternatives available for those vets returning from overseas who were facing situations where they became addicted to drugs and were maybe having themselves caught up in crime, nonviolent crime, but in crimes that there's a better path for them. You're not going to jail your way out of the problem, so we find them the rehabilitation necessary. We'll do the same thing with the users to make sure the addiction crisis is curbed by having those counselors available and the medical institutions available to help them.
Narcan, the drug that's going into the schools. Your position on that, and what does that say that we have to put a overdose drug like that in our secondary schools?
I voted for Narcan, for the use of Narcan with our first responders. Continue to support it. I think it's a very sad situation. I think enough time isn't being spent either at home or in school to educate the kids on the dangers of drugs and what the effects will be on down the road if they continue to use drugs. And we're going to take a very active place in the community and in the schools, making sure those kids are educated properly.
Child protection, it is a hot topic. It will continue to be a hot topic, especially here in central Pennsylvania regarding Jerry Sandusky's situation. A lot of people have been pushing for an investigation into the Second Mile Foundation. They feel that a full one was never completed. How would you feel about going about that if there's evidence launching an actual formal investigation? Kathleen Kane promised one, then she changed it to a review.
I think it's necessary to do an investigation to the Second Mile if for no other reason there were state funds there. So that gives us the entree through the door to make sure that the Second Mile was operating properly, to make sure it was conforming with the law, and if there was any illegal activities, to go after those responsible for same. And I've been a huge advocate for child protection here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, working with my colleagues on the Kids for Cash to end that program in northeastern PA. I was responsible for Jessica's laws coming into the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and I've continued to advocate to make sure that our children are safe. In fact, Andrew, I have a program in place when I become Attorney General that we're going to go after the Megan's Law. And what we're going to do is work in conjunction with our DAs, our county sheriffs, our state police, to swoop through sections of Pennsylvania to check these Megan's Law addresses to make sure the person's still living there. And if not, to find out where they are so we can alert that community that there may be a predator living there and they better be careful with their children. It's necessary because we believe that a number of people have moved and not registered at their new place of residence.
The Milton Hershey Trust, you would be in a special position to oversee that in your position as Attorney General. $3.6 million was spent out of that trust to investigate themselves with some improper benefits of board members. How can we limit the corruption and still continue to protect kids in that trust form? Because $3.6 million, that's a lot of kids that could have been educated down there in Hershey.
I've always been one who's advocated the Office of Attorney General needs to make sure that those nonprofits, those charitable trusts are adhering to their charters and their bylaws, and take the time to investigate them and make sure that they are. And as far as the Hershey Trust, it's time to put some teeth into the agreements that they've reached with these trusts and have the guts, have a leader that's got the guts to go after them and make them reform. I did that with DRPA in Philadelphia, Delaware River Port Authority. I've been in conflict with this governor to get some legislation through, but because of our advocacy and our constant drawing the public attention to DRPA, we've gotten some reforms done down there under Governor Christie and Governor Corbett. And I'm looking forward to taking that same tack going forward with the Hershey Trust to force them in a situation to take a look at themselves and the spending and the perks. That money should be going to kids, not to $400 bottles of wine or first-class hotels. We have to make sure that they are adhering to what the core function of the Hershey Trust, just like we did with DRPA, make sure they adhere to that core function of the Hershey Trust, not themselves.
In your mind, what will be the single most important issue on voters' minds across the entire Commonwealth regarding this race?
Regarding the Office of Attorney General?
Yes.
Someone who will establish the integrity of that office, who will restore the professionalism, and someone who will ensure their safety by understanding not only the laws of the Commonwealth, but being able to practice the laws of the Commonwealth. And I think that the people of Pennsylvania want their safety protected, and they want to make sure that their kids have a place to grow and the kids have a place to be safe when they go out and play. And that's my pledge to them, is I will adhere to the laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, continue to work with the legislature to effect changes to the law to make sure that it's a better place for people of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and have the integrity to put back in that office.
Senator Rafferty, it's been a pleasure having you on today. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to stop by.
Thanks, Andrew. My pleasure.
And thank you at home for watching WHVL's For the Record. Stay with us all throughout the election season for the most complete coverage of your statewide and local races. Thank you very much. The center of it all is coming up next here on WHVL.